All right. Thank you for inviting me, and I would like to appreciate you for the initiative you have taken to establish what is called the African University, the Osiri University. And you asked me to, one of the things I think we should do uh, when we develop this new university is to acknowledge the rich knowledge heritage that existed in Africa. I mean, we need to really uh, systematically really work on it and show that we have amazing knowledge that some people have already done work. There's a lot of work done by a number of scientists from Africa, but what is the problem is in the education system, in the curriculum, none of this is included. For example, we had Ivan van Sertima. He wrote a book called Blacks in Science, and Ancient and Modern. It was written in 1983. But if you see that time, the book, if you see it explains from mathematics, astronomy, ancient and modern astronomy, agriculture, architecture, engineering, aeronautics, medicine, metallurgy, physics, writing systems, on almost everything. What have Africans created? Uh, for example, people have written an outline of Africa's role in the history of physics. Papers like that have been written, but nobody seems to have acknowledged them. Uh, Steel making in Africa, for example, in the ancient Africa, how did our people create steel? Has been written. Many papers have been written. Uh, the African background of medicinal science have been written. I just wanted to, on mathematics, the original mathematics. In fact, mathematics originated in its own way. It's not the kind of mathematics you have sees now. There's amazing different ways of mathematical logic that existed in Africa. All this traditional and indigenous knowledge, we cannot ignore it. We must include it now on almost every sphere of the discipline. We need to do it, and we also need to be very clever in terms of how we integrate this knowledge with whatever is in the existing world, whatever is going on, so that we bring Africans that they need to acknowledge and recognize that their own people have done immense contributions on almost every sphere. For example, when we discuss about enlightenment, we talk only about European enlightenment, but just long before the European enlightenment, there was an African enlightenment created by an African philosopher. In fact, that philosopher has been recognized by have been recognized as Kant, as many of the top philosophers in the West. He has been given long before the European Enlightenment. There was an African Enlightenment, and there was reasoning. There was a very interesting logic about how you reason between God and human beings and where they come from. It's amazing how he has created it. So we had all these things that have existed in Africa, but we don't know it. And I don't think we need to blame anyone for not knowing it. Ourselves must be the ones that should say, how did we go through history? How do we look back in order to look forward? I think we need to do something like that. So what I like, let me go through the PowerPoint, and I start with inspiration. Mainly what I like the main message I want to pass today is to just give you not everything. I could not give you all the knowledge is so rich, to be honest with you, the research. But I just took a few things so that you can see from Africa, there has been some extraordinary things. At least those indications you'll get. And then I like you to motivate you to do the research yourselves in every field you are in, so that I'll just give you a general map now. After that, we all work on it to actually create very good curriculum, very good modules, and really develop systematically the indigenous base, foundational base. And I think this is very important. If we do this, it actually helps also our own people not to feel that all the knowledge has to be imported, uh, like they buy the cars, Mercedes Benz and all this for, you buy all these foreign cars and everything. In the same way, you also borrow all this knowledge. No, 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 no. The knowledge from us also is rich. Even now, even in the indigenous sphere, in the rural areas, even our people, there is a way they know, the revelational way by which they know. Some people call it mystical, but that knowledge, I think we should find a way to actually decode it, record it, and systematize it so that it can be included we can even create innovation, knowledge innovation. Why not? We could do that. Science innovation, mathematical innovation, different ways we can imagine and think. And I think that is what I like you to think about. Let me just go through the PowerPoint so that I don't take a long time. Uh, I want you to see, you see, the mental reason is different from reason. Revelation is different from both. I think there's the different ways by which the knowledge, for example, the reasoning, it is not like the kind of reasoning 1 + 1 is 2. It's a logic which actually says differently from a revelational way. So there's other ways of knowing that have been done. And these different other ways of knowing, some people don't recognize them very well. So we need to also value these things. So that's what is important. When a knowledgeable person dies, it says the library goes. This is my supervisor, who was very, very, very good. He used to say, the imperialist builders rejected will be the cornerstone of the arch. Trust me, Africa will rise. So I hope you, with all this knowledge, that if you revive it, I think we could do it. He says, neither sociologists, nor economists, nor political scientists have satisfactory theories of social change. It's unlikely that they will develop them unless they overcome their fragmentation to separate jealously regarded kingdoms and learn to cooperate with each other and with natural scientists. This is amazing. There is another man, Wilson, his name. He is now talking about the unity of knowledge. In our case also, we do need to know the indigenous knowledge we shouldn't ignore. We should bring it back to our knowledge sphere. So I think the lesson from him, from what he said, we can actually draw that important knowledge, that you can't just do it by disciplinary silos. We need to also go beyond it and try to understand problems, projects, like action-based, work-based, integrated learning, and knowledge has to be done in a different way. So the learning and knowledge that we have is at the most but little compared with what that of which we are ignorant. I think we are very ignorant about Africa's knowledge. So I am trying to, all of us say to you, I myself, I feel I'm ignorant. I'm learning a lot now, just doing some research. I have written also a paper, 1 or 2 papers on this science, but we need to actually write a book. We should have written a book on it, like others, like Ivan Septima has done. We should do that. So the learning and knowledge that we have is at the most but little compared with that which we are ignorant, which is true. Whoever seems to be a student has never been a student, never tired to learn new things. I like you to learn new. I'm just trying to inspire you to learn always new things. Always say you are a learner. I have written a paper on the work that many scientists wrote about the idea that not only Africa, but even China and other countries, the knowledge they created in the ancient world is primitive. That's what they're saying. it cannot be acknowledged as science. That's what they say. They really reject the and this is a person. He's originally from South Africa, but he went to England, and he is in the University of London, and he's a biologist, and he wrote a book called The Unnatural Nature of Science. And in that book, he simply said, all non-Western science are pre-scientific. They are not scientific. They do not have scientific. They are fantasy. They are emotion. They lack common sense. They lack scientific knowledge. Basically, that's what he says. And then he completely he links all other religions except Christianity also has connection with science. Everything else, he also rejects Islam, everything like that. So that's what he did. So continue. Let me just see. Let me just tell you that that's on the African. Of course, the most attack he did was, of course, on African science. So he advocated what we call epistemological ethnocentrism. You could call it the epistemological coronavirus type of thinking now, what we have. He says Greek seen as a cradle of Western science. He links Greece with Europe, and he doesn't link Greece with ancient Africa, ancient Egypt, Kemet, and Ethiopia, all these areas that he didn't link. But as a scientist wrote a book, Martin Bernal is his name. Black Athena is a book he called The Ancient Afro-Asiatics of Ancient Civilization. I mean, the classical civilization. He basically said, no, nearly everything the Greeks got came from Africa. So in fact, they attacked him. He was attacked 3-4 times, this professor. 3 or 4 times he defended. Why? And he actually showed the clear demonstration where the Greeks got all their knowledge, not from Europe. You know, it's actually initially all the Greek is, he called it Black Athena. I remember I went to a conference called Globalix, and it was held in Athens. I told them, give me a chance to explain this to you about why you guys are not more in Europe, but initially all your knowledge came from Africa. I like you to read that book. It's called Black Athena. Martin Bernal is his name. And it's called, on the Afro-Asiatic roots, he called it a classical civilization. All the civilization of the world came from Africa, is what he says. So the key point is the Eurocentrism privileges the Greek origin of Western science by rejecting the African side. Continue. Yeah, okay. So if science is exploring, understanding, knowing humans, nature, and the universe, why start with Greece? The emergence of modern science in the West owed major debts to many influences and innovations in Asia, Africa, and Arabia. And ancient Greek is not alone. If not alone, why? It is doing with weaving a Eurocentric myth that Greece was the only source of all science and knowledge. European cultures have been seen as primitive. White people have an obligation to rule the world. It's a white man's burden, is what this man, what's his name, Lewis Wolpert, and some of his other friends promoted. They must provide cultural development to others coming from the non-West because they are primitive. They must be civilized. Help them to become Western by encouraging and forcing them to adopt Western ways. To modernize became to be Westernized or Europeanized. In other words, when you became Western, modern, you become Westernized or Europe. If you are not like that, then you are still primitive. That's what they said. Continue. So, especially since the second half of the 19th century, from its early phase in the 18th century, it's still not gone, this Eurocentrism. Not only was world history written wholesale, but universal social science was newborn, not just as a European, but a Eurocentric invention. This is a guy called Andre Gunder Frank. who's written books on systems on development. Eurocentrism provided the foundation of modernization theory. Civilizations like our own Africa gave up their own system to accommodate Eurocentrism at great cost to themselves. Even China and others did the same. But China and Japan did not go as badly as Africa in failing for the Eurocentric mimicry. We are great mimickers, the Africans. We don't know ourselves. I really am not happy with us because we mimic everything. Our women mimic their hair, everything. They want to look like the natural thing about us. We don't value. Sorry for, don't attack me. I say to my students, uh, please be yourselves. So, I mean, just be natural. What's the problem? So backlash against Eurocentrism, continue. There is now a lot of, as I say, there's a lot of, I was in England, I was teaching in a university called Middlesex University. It was in the engineering faculty. Then we had about 300 or so students, and we used to develop a course on science, technology, and society. And I used to be even the head of department for it. And in there, when I was teaching ideas, I used to teach a course called Ideas of Science. And in that Ideas of Science, all the courses I used to teach was about Einstein, about Newton, about all the Western science. That's all I know, though. What do you want me? I mean, what can I say? Then what happened was some of the students said, always, Mamo, you teach us all these things, but why not teach us about optics, about many? There are also other scientists. Why you don't mention? So there was a Morocco student called Gita Al-Harak. She's a lady. She's now, I don't know where she is now, and she got really upset with me. And then she said, "You really need to teach us also about something else." Then the students, you see how good they are. Students can encourage you. She encouraged me. I think she got upset with me because I was not sure. In the beginning, I got a bit confused. How am I going to teach this course? Then later, I agreed with her. Then I started reading. Then I started reading Ivan Sertima, Blacks in Science, Martin Bernal. Then when I started doing that, I said, okay. I said to my British deans and others, I said, it took me about two years. I developed a course on non-Western science. When I taught the course on non-Western science, I developed what's African science, African mathematics, African engineering, African architecture, African writing systems, everything like that I did. Dogon science in Mali, astronomy, it's extraordinary. Can you imagine on Dogon science? The astronomy they had is incredible. But the French used to say, how can they be thinking? It can't be the Mali Dogons who be the people there who could be creating this thinking. It's too advanced. Even what the astronomers, the real astronomers do, what they don't know is what they know. Cyrus A, Cyrus B, the kind of thing they did, the discovery is incredible. And the way they explain it is also very revelational, through revelational approaches and extraordinary approaches. Then they said, oh, it must be a French scientist must have come and told them, and that's probably why they're telling us. It couldn't be the Dogon people who will do it. They say like that. I swear to you. I mean, I like you to read about it because it's amazing. I'll just say a little bit about the Dogon thing. Chinese science, of course, Islamic science and the Hindu science, together, they all reject Greece as the origin of science. They give examples of inventions that did not come from Greece. They show how the Greeks borrowed from others. Martin Bernal, as I told you, Needham on the China side, Needham is, and Frank and others. All these people who wrote, trust me, who wrote excellent things about the knowledge that was rejected are non-racist scientists, excellent scientists, and they are Western scientists. So we shouldn't reject Western. They are very, very good people. Like my own supervisor, Chris Freeman, and I have a very good brother here also, Professor Steve. He's here with us. They are very good. I mean, we have very good people who are very genuine, who want to know the world from their side too. From our side, also, we have all ourselves who just mimic all the wrong things. So we need to change. We need to understand reality and discover everything. That's what we need to do. So Eurocentrism continues. Eurocentrism is still dominant. It hasn't left. Non-Western science is not acknowledged still. It's not included in the curriculum, not just by the West, but also by the dominated non-West. One culture science is still not there. There's still raging debates on science. There is also what is called the two cultures of science, and there's debate on the social sciences, the natural science. The debate is that most of the social sciences do not have the credibility to be qualified as science. So we have that kind of problem, but that's not a major issue. If you have issues like that, those people who say that even the social sciences have problems, then can you imagine what they would say about the sciences that that our ancestors created? So you can see that. So there's no science peace yet, and there's still a science wars debate. Please, we had a conference in Durham in 1994 in United Kingdom. And I think on that conference, in fact, the things this guy, Lewis Wolpert was there. I openly discussed rejected his, and that came out in even they put it in the media and everything. So you can look at it, that one I have just mentioned. I have put it in there for you in the sciencewars.triport.com. You can look at it there. There's the thing. Let's continue. So the science wars fought between those who wished to guard the epistemological purity of science. The first love of the science wars was faced in 1990 with the publication of two popular works, one by an American physicist, Dreams of a Final Theory, by Steven Weinberg, and the other by a British biologist, The Unnatural Nature of Science, by Lewis Wolpert. He's not British. He's originally from South Africa, but he migrated to Britain. So that's what happened. Then there's also the interesting question now is there's also problems of disciplinarity, non-disciplinarity. There's all kinds of negative problems we have in terms of the sciences, and there's been like some debates about also some people making writings that didn't make sense and so on. As I told you, though, in Durham we had a big debate on it, and the debate was mainly those people who said pure science, and those the social sciences that do not qualify for being, and then the social sciences debating on science also have challenges, and they were saying that we should reject them. There's no social studies of science, then something like that is what was going on. So there was a lot of debates like this. They are saying social sciences are seen to dislike science, said to have shared a tone hostility to science. Mission needed to be scientists to rescue science from those who are hostile. So the natural scientists are saying the social sciences are a problem. Imagine when I say to you now, we should include indigenous knowledge, indigenous mathematics, indigenous science, indigenous everything, architecture, steel making, all kinds of things that we're saying. If we say like that, then of course you will have opposition, definitely. But that opposition, we should be able to counter opposite by science, not by fighting them politically. So I think that is there's all kinds of problems we have on the natural sciences. Let's just give you no problem to produce historical and social theories of science. This is J.D. Bernal in the 40s said, Thomas Kuhn in the 60s. There's a paradigm shift in science. Problem is when social scientists arrogate intellectual capacity to evaluate empirically scientific epistemic content, and when they claim to produce theories denying the objectivity and truth claims of scientific knowledge. No relativism can either prove truth or validate falsity in the science enterprise applying the logic of symmetry. No social constructivism, postmodernism. Social scientists unqualified to legitimize science. Social science becomes social bashers. So the natural scientists and the social scientists are fighting. So there's no science war. There's science war is going on. There's no science peace. There's also no something beyond the post-science kind of claim to create a space for all of them to communicate. That is a problem. But at the same time, other scientists are now coming with what is called the unity of knowledge. Like as I told you, that my former supervisor, Professor Chris Freeman, he also said we should not be in this disciplinary silos. We should try to solve problems, and to solve problems, we need the knowledge from every discipline, something like that. Continue. Yeah. So yeah, but there's of course disputes continue. Now from the dispute to science, now to the dispute to knowledge. Let's come to this one now. Not only do we have problems in the disputes of science, as I said to you, there's a science war between them. There's no science peace, and there's no also post-science, evolving post-science arena for the sciences to come together, so to communicate with each other and understand each other, and be able to judge what they can and they cannot do. But now we also move to the knowledge area. Knowledge too has different modes of being. One is mode one, is disciplinary based and narrow. The main idea of every science is to create new knowledge. How do you create new knowledge? Do you do it through one based on discipline? Do you do it through interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, interactive, opening the knowledge space for exchange and communication? Do you do it like that? Or do you do the third way, knowledge as to interdisciplinary knowledge, that what my good friend, Professor Andrew Jamison, characterized as a hybrid imagination? Do you also add not only knowledge, but knowledge with imagination? This classification is within the modern scientific knowledge of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It does not address the important knowledge that's classified as indigenous knowledge, broad-based innovation, community-level knowledge. This kind of the three knowledge I just described are in the sphere of the modern knowledge sphere. But now, if we are going to add in the indigenous knowledge, the broad-based innovation that comes from our rural areas, our people, and the community level knowledge in the informal and other sectors, the traditional medicine, the herbal medicine, many of the things you see in our, how do we then again find a way to include them and see also what disputes we have with knowledge too. Like we have the dispute on science, we may also have a dispute on the knowledge. Okay, continue. So now, yes. So knowledge, no, sorry, go back here. Knowledge, the two cultures of science has both indigenous and scientific characteristics. The mode 1 to 3 classification is within modern scientific knowledge of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It does not address the important knowledge that's classified as indigenous knowledge, broad-based innovation, community-level knowledge. Okay, continue. All right. What is indigenous knowledge? But indigenous knowledge cannot be ignored. Indigenous is very relevant. It's also called traditional and local knowledge. Okay. It is a product of cultures, traditions, values, beliefs, experience transmitted from generation to generation. It does not come from the universities and the academy. It needs, though, universities, governments, and academics to excavate, record, code, and develop the indigenous knowledge. Okay, continue. So what is the difference between indigenous knowledge and scientific knowledge? Indigenous knowledge is often seen as subordinate. Scientific knowledge is always dominant. Indigenous knowledge thinking style is said to be intuitive. All right? And scientific knowledge is said to be analytical, reductionist, and other things with hypothesis and so on. Yeah, induction, deduction, these kind of things. Indigenous knowledge communication approach is mainly oral, storytelling, experiential. Scientific knowledge is academic, positivist, and objective. Indigenous knowledge is explanation. It brings in spirituality and inexplicable, revelational kind of mystical, sometimes they call it, can be added in it. But it does have values. I mean, it's not just to say that even if it's mystical, you should analyze it very systematically to make sure why that kind of revelational ideas actually make sense. It's like when you dream, when you have a dream, sometimes your dream may be a reality, sometimes it may not be a reality. So how can you have this level of weighing of knowing that you come to know when you are asleep, when you are not able to know when you are awake? So I mean, it's a very complicated life world we have. Our imagination is very, very complicated. So the human imagination. So it's not something we should denounce. It's something we should try to understand. You see, but then the way we are as human beings, we create lots of problems. So scientific knowledge is hypothesis, laws, and so on. So you have these variations in terms of indigenous knowledge and scientific knowledge. They are different in terms of the way they get revealed, and the knowledge is created. How do you create? You may have a sense of curiosity, a sense of wonder, a sense of skepticism. That is in all the knowledge sphere. That is common in all of them. But when it comes to the way, the particular way by which it's done is different. Now, indigenous knowledge is recognized for social and economic development at the rural and community level. Now, all these organizations, World Bank, UNESCO, UNDP, all UNIDO, all of them now discuss about indigenous knowledge. Exactly what they do is not easy to know, but they also discuss it. So indigenous knowledge is recognized for social and economic development at the rural and community level. The challenge is how to develop indigenous knowledge by organizing a knowledge piece that leads to a positive sum game between indigenous knowledge and scientific knowledge, technology, and engineering. Keep the identity of engineering knowledge, indigenous knowledge, even when promoting scientific knowledge with science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, to bring out the transformative components from indigenous knowledge by integrating with the science, technology, engineering, mathematics, innovation, modern science, technology, engineering, and so on. Continue. So, but linking indigenous knowledge with scientific knowledge requires at least what I recognize as 4 steps that are needed. 4 steps can be taken to link indigenous knowledge with scientific knowledge. In other words, with the STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. We need to find ways by which the fighting that I mentioned to you between the science wars, between the natural scientists and the social scientists, that kind of fighting should be uh, overcome by socialization. In other words, the indigenous knowledge producers and the scientific knowledge producers must come together. How indigenous knowledge can influence their science, how they can learn from it, and also from the scientific knowledge, how indigenous knowledge producers can also learn. So that mutuality is very, very, very important. Then we need to do externalization, combined innovation, internal embedding, and so on. This kind of new activities are necessary. Socialization promotes knowledge and experience exchange through engagement in social activities, like informal meetings, living together, discussions, doing research, many things like that. How do we bring the knowledge and experience exchange from those who do the scientific knowledge and those who do indigenous knowledge? How do we bring that about? That can be done through all kinds of interactions that actually are positive. Is there any chance that can be done? That requires, first, your prejudice must be over. You know, like the racism we have now. You know, we like we should say black lives matter, white lives matter. In the same way, indigenous knowledge matters, scientific knowledge matters. Unless we have something like that, then if we don't have those kinds of values, we'll have a problem. Okay, continue. Continue. Transform the externalizations to transform socialized tacit knowledge gained to explicit knowledge by creating concepts that can be understood and exchanged. This is very important. The tacit knowledge that is indigenous may be very clear to those who are in the indigenous knowledge sphere, but it may not be explicit and knowable to those in the scientific sphere. How do we then make a situation where the tacit knowledge becomes explicit knowledge, where the concepts and the methods are sufficiently, and the data and whatever is sufficiently articulated so that the two sides are able to understand each other better? Something like that is what we need. So the new exchange, knowledge exchange, communication is very, very important. So you externalize the tacit to the explicit knowledge. That's something is very important. Continue. Next, combined innovation. You transform explicit knowledge into both systemic, from making explicit knowledge to be communicated, diffused, and systematized. This is very, very important. This is the innovation that's critical. In other words, the indigenous knowledge should also be connected to the scientific knowledge, or the other way around. Even scientific knowledge can also generate outputs that actually can stimulate more indigenous investigation research. So we need to find a way that this combination of communication, diffusion, and systematization, and modeling, and so on, can be dynamized. I think that's what we need to do. Okay, continue. Next. Internalization or embedding. This makes explicit knowledge to be embedded into tacit knowledge, making it more complex and dynamic. This is important. If there is a chance to embed the indigenous knowledge with the scientific knowledge, a new combination, a new hybrid imagination can also be generated, which is amazing. What exactly that will do in terms of solving all our complex problems that we face now? We have so many challenges now. What don't we have now? We have the health problem creating economic problem, and the economic problem creating more health problem, environmental problem, many things like that, social problem, knowledge problem. We have challenges in the world now, which are very, very complicated. But how would we then create all the knowledge sphere that comes? For example, now, look what is happening now with this coronavirus. Look what in our country, in Madagascar and others, they say they have their own vaccines based on traditional knowledge, on indigenous knowledge. Then the World Health Organization and the others, who are looking for vaccine, and who are trying to develop vaccine for this coronavirus, they say no, this is not right. And then the Madagascar government withdrew from the World Health Organization. I mean, can you imagine this level of dispute takes place? And instead of saying exactly how did you do it, what is it that you have done, investigate it systematically, find out exactly what the Madagascar are claiming, and then based on that, see whether it's valid or not to just denounce each other first, and then everybody gets and then it becomes political. Then it gets very complicated. Now you have, I don't know how many, I mean, Professor Steve sent me some on COVID virus. Over 78 countries are engaged in trying to develop this vaccine, and it's competition. I mean, whoever is going to get it is going to get money. It's more like that, not the health of the people or the welfare of the people that matters. This is the biggest problem we have in the world. Our values are not right. We need a total paradigm shift on how to validate something. Now, the key thing now should be to get rid of this coronavirus, and not to make, for some people to make a lot of money by saying, oh, we invented it, we're the best, we're the blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's not that, that's not the most important thing. Everybody should be collaborating now to try to find a solution quickly, but we're not finding a solution quickly. The expectation is that this coronavirus might still go on, because nobody even knows how to test it properly and everything. See, that's what I'm saying. So the indigenous knowledge part, the herbal medicine, the traditional medicine, all this sphere that which exists in the traditional sphere, that should not be ignored. It should be actually now the kind of thing I'm saying, internalization, embedding, all right? Externalization, socialization, all these new synthesis, new combination, absolutely necessary now to actually address all the challenges we face in the world. As I mentioned to you, Ivan Sertima said the image of the African has been built upon his lowest common denominator. Africa is the cradle of humanity. Civilization, astronomy, science, mathematics, and philosophy originated from Africa. Can you go ahead? Please let me go. Yeah, continue. Like, I just want to give you some examples from Africa. Proto-Mats, Limbobo born, 35,000 BC, Ishango born, Congo, 25,000 BC. I really like you to get, there's a lot of study, a lot of, can I just say to you, I don't know how, if we do the course, it would be very good to go through all of these things. I cannot go through all of them now, But I just want to mention to you the various ways by which extraordinary things have been created in Africa. And on almost every sphere, Africa has created incredible things. So that is what I just want to mention to you. I just want to go through it quickly, but I have a huge references. I mean, of all the people who've done these studies, it's incredible on the mathematics, on the physics, on all sphere, medicine, architecture, all this still everything side. So it might be very and medicine, everything. So what we could do is, it's if we develop in the university, like Osiri, my brother is trying. If we want to develop it, I think we should systematically, on the science, technology, engineering, mathematics side, exactly what has been created and all the knowledge, all the research that has been done across the world. That research we should really tabulate and get all the materials, digitalize them, like our brother Professor Sunday Ojo is doing. Now we're trying to digitalize the entire, all our knowledge, our languages. We can also do it. Our indigenous knowledge can be also systematically, all these documents could be digitalized. Then trust me, the courses could be developed. Our children will grow up knowing what they should, not saying they have to learn the things that other people have created, but what their own ancestors also have created. If they have that foundation, then it's easier for them to learn anything else without any problem. Okay, that's what I'm saying. So let me just say that ancient Egypt, Amos Rhyme mathematical papyrus, Sona geometry Angola, symmetrical nonlinear basis for new mathematical ideas like mirror curves and various classes of matrices, cycles, cylinder, helix. This was all done. African fractals, West and Central Africa, repeating geometric patterns at various scales used in textiles, painting, sculpture, cosmologies, architecture, town planning. Fractals are the base of the World Wide Web. Can I just say to you, in these fractals, binary logic in Yoruba culture for both computation and metaphysics, amazing things have been done by our own people in different ways. The most interesting thing is what's interesting is, let me just say, on geometry, for example. Can I just say this to you? On the racism side, geometry also was created in Africa. Not mathematics was created in Africa first, before everybody else. They said no, geometry, Africans cannot, their mind, they are so backward and very primitive. Their mind cannot create geometry. There's writing like that. I cannot believe it. I have seen writings like this. So we have problems like that. Physics, mechanics, engineering. I just gave you a source on physics, the history of physics. Africans have created physics, mechanics, engineering, the level, the screw, Archimedes principle, nuclear physics, all these solar physicists, chemistry, metallurgy, ceramics, Iron Age, Southern Africa, metallurgy of iron, Benin bronze, indigenous artisanal mining, medicine, Impote, father of medicine, first woman surgeon, first dentist was an African woman, blood transfusions they have done in astronomy, ancient Egypt solar calendar, Dogon, Cyrus B, Benjamin Banker, surveyor, astronomer, all these things have been done. Continue. Next one. Just to give you an example, I cannot go through all of them because there's no, I don't think he will give me time to explain everything. African philosophy, African concept of personhood, communalism, African humanism, employed in HIV/AIDS prevention campaign in Uganda and Senegal, the Gacha, reconciliation in Rwanda, critical retrieval, Sankofa science, socially inclusive science, applied to study stem cell research in California, environmental philosophy, eco-bio communitarianism, ethics of care, ethics of nature relatedness, can be applied to energy policy, epistemology, the nature of knowledge, belief, values in Yoruba culture. What all I'm saying to you is, in almost different cultures in our world, we have so many interesting things about African philosophy. One of the things that my brother is doing is Ubuntu, which is Ma'at and, Sankofa, many things like that. We have values and philosophies that actually will save the world, is actually come from Africa. which we don't practice. Africans also have been originated many scientific discoveries. Luckily, as I just told you, many of the acknowledgements have come from who? From Western researchers. Not Africans. Africans also have originated many scientific discoveries. Evidence has been acknowledged by astronomers and engineers from Western research universities that in many major inventions, documented contributions have been made by Africans. Carbon steel was made 2,000 years ago in Tanzania. Astronomical observations in the Mali of the Dogons have been acknowledged by Carl Siegel of Cornell University. Language, mathematical systems, architecture, agriculture, cattle rearing, navigation of inland water, ways and open seas, medicine and communication, writings, in all these fields, Africans have been inventors. Continue. Just to let you know, and this is acknowledged by Western universities, big researchers and professors have acknowledged that Africans have created it. African knowledge in agriculture is rich. This has been recognized and acknowledged fully by the US Academy of Science in 1996. Africa has more native cereals than any other continent. It has its own species of rice, as well as finger millet, fonio, pearl millet, sorghum, teff, Guinea millet, and several dozens wild cereals whose grains are eaten. This is a food heritage that has fed people for generations, possibly stretching back to the origins of humankind. It's also a local legacy of genetic wealth upon which a sound food future might be built. But strangely, it has been bypassed in modern times. Forward-thinking scientists are starting to look at the old cereal heritage with unbiased eyes. Peering past the myth, they see waiting in the shadows a storehouse of resources whose qualities offer promise not just to Africa, but the world. The Ethiopian crop teff is medicine, is seen as medicine. It has great potential to be the nutrition for healthy living. Food security in Africa should not be in doubt at all.